Hello champions, how are you? Miss Mita, hope all of you stay healthy and stay safe. Okay, after this, Miss Mita is going to tell you some fact. Okay, please enjoy. Okay champions, now Miss Mita is going to tell some facts about Thomas Edison, but with comic version. Okay, let's start. This is the cover of ebooks of Thomas Edison. This is the copyright of the book. Even the ebook ebooks have their copyright. Okay. 150 years ago in America, Samuel and Nancy Edison had a baby boy. They called him Thomas. They worried about him when he was small because he was often ill. He was so sick that he couldn't go to school until he was 8. Then he started to go deaf. But Tom Edison was going to live to grand old age of 84, and when he died, his name would be known all over the world. Tom grew up on the border between the USA and Canada. Life was very different then. Native Indian tribes still roamed America's Great Plains. Black slaves worked in the cotton fields. Scientists knew about electricity, but no one had worked out how to use it in people's homes. So there were no television, no telephones, no highways, not even any electric lights. Young Tom looked at this world and he began to ask questions. What makes birds fly? How does fire works? Why is the sky blue? Tom was always asking questions. This annoyed his teachers. They wished he would just sit quietly like the other children. Tom's mother took him away from school and tried to teach him herself. When she could not answer his question, Tom began to make his own investigations. Once, he got a friend to eat lots of sage leaf powder. This was a medicine that made fizzy bubbles when added to water. Tom wanted to see if it made bubbles in his friend to make him float like a balloon. Another time, he tried to hatch a nest full of goose eggs by sleeping on them himself. He loved to do experiments like this. Best of all, he liked playing with chemicals. When he was 12, he went out to work. A railway train ran between his home in Port Huron and the nearby city of Detroit. Tom took a job selling newspaper to the passengers. Tom's idea of a good time was to work from dawn to dusk. He was more than just a newspaper boy on his train. Trips to and from Detroit. He also sold sweets and drinks and vegetables from his parents' garden. For a while, he even wrote and printed his own little paper, full of local news and gossip. He would spend his lunch times at the Detroit Free Library. His aim was to read every single book there, even the ones he did not really understand. If he ever had a free moment on the train, he carried on experimenting with his chemicals. The guard had given him permission to set up his equipment in a quiet corner. Tom labeled each of his bottles poison to put off anyone else from playing around with them. Unfortunately, one of his experiments went wrong. There was a bang and the smoking car caught fire. The guard was furious. He threw out all Tom's equipment, but not all the railway workers were so unhelpful. One day, Tom was at a station sorting his newspapers. Suddenly, he saw a loose wagon start to slide backwards down the track. Right there in front of it was the station master's young son, too busy playing to notice. Tom dashed forwards. In the nick of time, he scooped he scooped up the boy and saved his life. The station master was so grateful. He asked Tom to name his own reward. "Teach me to work the telegraph machine," said 15 years old Tom. In those days, the telegraph machine was the quickest way of sending a message over a long distance. You could tap out a message at one end of an electric wire, and someone miles away at the other end would receive it. The message was sent in Morse code, an alphabet of dots and dashes. Telegraph wires crisscrossed the whole of the USA. Now Tom could find out exactly how the messages were sent. By the age of 16, Tom had learned how to be a telegraph operator. He was still quite deaf, but he could hear the clicks on the line well enough. So he decided to stop working on the railway. For the next 6 years, he traveled from one city telegraph office to another, earning his living by sending and receiving messages. He was good and quick at his work, but several times he was fired from his job. This was because his mind was not always on the message. He still loved an experiment, and he wanted to invent ways of making the telegraph machine work faster and better. He also invented an electrical rat trap and an electrical vote counter for American politicians to use. No one wanted to buy Tom's inventions, but that did not stop him from filling up notebooks with all his ideas. He felt sure that one day he would invent things that people really needed. Tom's travel took him to New York. He was getting bored with tramping around the USA as a telegraph operator. What he really wanted to be was an inventor and machine maker. So he showed the Western Union Telegraph Company some new ways to make their telegraph machines work better. This time, he struck lucky. Western Union paid him well for all his ideas with a check for 40,000 US dollars. For 40,000 US dollars. Tom used the money to set up a workshop of his own in Norby, New York. Then, for 5 years, he worked harder than ever, mainly making improvements to the telegraph machine. He hired engineers to work for him. They called him the old man. Even though he was still in his 20s, he could be a fierce boss, but good fun too. Whenever an improvement worked, he did a little Zulu war dance to celebrate. In 1871, when he was 24, Tom had something else to celebrate. He got married. Tom's new wife was called Mary Stilwell. She was only 16, and she thought Tom was a wonderful, clever, funny man. But she was also a little afraid of him, and he was always so busy. Even on their wedding day, he worked until midnight. Sometimes he did not see him for days. The main thing is Tom's life was his work. It was always had been, and it was always would be. Tom and Mary had 3 children, Marion, Thomas, and William. Tom nicknamed the first 2 Dot and Dash, like the Morse code. He often let the children play near him while he worked. This was no longer in New York. That old workshop had become too small, so Tom had paid his father to come from Port Huron and built him a big new workplace at Menlo Park in New Jersey. He called it his invention factory. Tom began to work at Menlo Park in 1876. His next few inventions were going to make him famous. In the USA, people started calling him the Wizard of Menlo Park. They thought his new sound and light invention were light wandering magical spells. But even the best wizard needs helpers. Tom knew this. He paid several brilliant men to come and work with him at this invention factory. One of these men was John Creasy from Switzerland. Another was Charles Batchelor, an engineer born in England. As time went by, more men joined the team. Often they had to work together right through the night, but they had a lot of laughs too. Tom kept everyone smiling with his jokes. He even put an organ in the laboratory for music during meal times. And what did Tom want from them? A minor invention every 10 days and an important one every 6 months. The first important one came very soon. Alexander Graham Bell had just made the first speaking telegraph or telephone. It was a wonderful thing, but the voices sounded faint, and they carried for only a few miles. Western Union wanted someone to test it out and make it work really over long distances, so they asked the Wizard of Menlo Park. Tom and his team carried out over the 2,000 experiments with the telephone. Tom's hearing was now so bad that he had to use his teeth to listen with. He fixed a magnet to the phone, but bit on it, and the sound waves passed through his jaw, and the inner parts of his airways still work. At last, he made the breakthrough. He invented a small carbon transmitter that made all the difference. Now, even he could hear someone speaking down the phone. Western Union gladly bought his invention for $100,000, and all over the world aides of the telephone began. Tom probably did his little Zulu dance to celebrate, but already he had another brilliant idea. Tom wanted to make a phonograph or sound writer, a machine that could record and play back the human voice. Even Tom's team thought this was impossible, but with a sharp tape carbon transmitter, Tom recorded his voice onto a cylinder wrapped in tin foil. When he passed the cylinder under the tip again, the words were played back. The first words his team heard from the machine were, "Mary had a little lamb." They thought it was a trick. Surely someone was hiding in the room and shouting what Tom had said. It took 10 more years to make phonographs good enough to sell. Before then, the US president invited Tom to the White House to give him a personal performance. "I have made a good many machines," Tom said, "but this is my baby, and I expect it to grow up to be a big fellow." He was right. Today's huge recording industry began with his phonograph, but his last great invention will have an even bigger effect. 120 years ago, the world was a darker place. Gas lights or powerful electric arc lamps burned on some street, but after the sun went down, most of people lit their homes with wick candles or smoky, smelly oil lamps, but could set houses on fire if someone knocked them over. Like many other scientists, Tom dreamed of putting glowing electric lights into even the poorest people's houses. Now he boldly declared that he would make this dream come true. First, he had to make a light bulb that would glow for hours when switched on. Thousands of experiments later, he had one. He used carbonized or sooty cotton as the bulb filament. This was the thread that heated up and glowed brightly. Later, he used carbonized bamboo. He lit the whole of Menlo Park with these bulbs, but that was just the beginning. His plan was to light up all the New York. It was 3 p.m. on Monday, September 1882. Nearly 3 years had passed since Tom had invented his light bulb. Now he stood in his great new electric power station on Park Street, New York. He was very excited but very nervous too. The moment had come to open the power station. If everything went to plan, electricity would flow from it through miles of underground cables into the homes of just 85 paying customers. Their houses had been specially wired up and fitted with light bulbs. Would the bulbs light up? If they did, millions of people would want their homes to be connected to the power station in the same way. Tom nodded at the chief electrician and pulled the switch. He said a moment later the lights went on in 85 different places as everyone cheers and Wizard inventor could relax. Thanks mainly to him, the age of electric light and power had begun. But for Tom, sadness lay ahead. Tom moved his family to New York while he worked on the power station. 2 years after it opened, his wife Mary died of typhoid. Tom and his children felt lost. They thought that no one could take her place. Then Tom met a beautiful young woman called Minna Miller. Although he was very deaf, they talked about typing Morse code into each other's hands. One day, in a busy railway carriage, Tom tapped, "Will you marry me?" into Minna's hand. Yes, she tapped back, and no one else in the carriage knew what had happened. Tom, Minna, and the children moved to a big new home and invention factory at West Orange, New Jersey. 3 more children were born, Charles, Theodore, and Madeline. For years, Tom kept working as hard as ever. He had some small successes, but by now his great inventing days were over. Tom invents All the while, Edison said even in his dream, he and his team had made no fewer than 1,093 inventions. Okay, and Tom died in 1931 at the age of 48. He had lit up the world. There had to be a special way of saying goodbye to him. 3 nights later, at 10 o'clock, people all over the USA switched off their electric lights for 1 minute. Even the Statue of Liberty's torch went down. Then the last return, the great inventor, was that his invention would live on. Okay, Miss Mita, hope all of you enjoy the facts. And then after this, you can download the ebook and read at your home. Remember, stay healthy and stay safe. God bless you. Bye.